We work hard. We also try to work hard. And now, he deserves the rest that he needs.
Other government officials who visited the wake include Labor Secretary Bienvenido Laguesma, Energy Secretary Rafael Lotilla, Special Assistant to the President Secretary Anton Lagdameo, Executive Secretary Vic Rodriguez, House Speaker Martin Romualdez, and Senator Bong Revilla.
I always remember him as a real workaholic. Every day you get to receive news clippings with handwritten notes. Sinusubaybayan niya kung ano mga dapat na gagawin. And he always expects that you will be giving him feedback.
Other prominent personalities and former ranking government officials who also dropped by were former Vice President Leni Robredo, former Senate President Tito Soto, and former Supreme Court Justice and Ombudsman Conchita Carpio Morales.
He has shed off the political colors. Kahit na LDP ka, NPC ka, and there were 5 NPC in the Senate during that time. But he worked with us.
Robredo and Marcos's paths did not cross at the Heritage Park as the former Vice President left before the President arrived. George Cahiles, CNN Philippines.
Let's now get the latest from Heritage Park. Stanley Gaheta joining us live from there to tell us former President Rodrigo Duterte was there about an hour and a half ago. Stanley?
Former President Rodrigo Duterte is here to pay his last respects to former President Fidel Ramos. He says that it was Ramos who first egged him to run for president, and Ramos even gave him campaign contribution. Duterte describes FVR as a strict leader owing to his military background and that Mr. Ramos was a man of his word. People continue to arrive here at the Heritage Park to pay tribute to former President Ramos. Among them are former Defense Secretary Delfin Lorenzana, former Interior Secretary Eduardo Año, former Chief Justice Antonio Carpio, former National Security Advisor Hermogenes Esperon, and Attorney Salvador Panelo. They remember FVR's kindness and his way of treating others with dignity and respect. The same sentiments we got from his hometown in Asingan, Pangasinan. Here in Asingan, not a single bust or statue has been erected in honor of their most famous and also their most favorite son, Fidel Valdez Ramos. Only the family's ancestral home, not far from the town hall, serves as a reminder that the country's 12th president grew up there. Photos of the Ramos family warmly welcome visitors. His security officer, Amadeo Licudan, shares his fondest memories of the late president.
Duplex po ito. Itong sa kaliwa kay former President Ramos. And then dito sa kanan kay former Senator Siahani. Ako naman po yung inilagay niya rito na security niya, galing ako sa Presidential Security Group. Since na nag-retire na ako, ang napag-usapan namin, kahit retire na ako, hindi ko iiwan ito. Habang andito to, nasa kanila pa, andito rin ako. Ito po yung ginagamit ni former President Ramos na lamisa. Pag andito yung mga cabinet members niya, dito sila kumakain, nag-uusap-usap.
Licudan says FVR was an officer and a gentleman and he will never run out of good words about him.
Pinaka-memorable. Every time na magkasama ka, basta pinatawag ako, magpupusap ako. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Pinakamabait na tao yan na nakilala ko. Itrato lahat ng tao. Kung paanong trato mo sa sarili mo, ganon din yung trato mo sa tao.
People also spoke about Ramos' grounded character. Mary Director recalls Ramos' visit in Asingan in 2007 when he personally gave her a piece of cigar.
After namin na inassist si former president, may inauguration ng isang building dito. Natutuwa po kasi syempre it's from our former president. Wala pong katumbas ito. Talagang iingatan ko po ito.
FVR's niece Angel Febre says her famous uncle always cared for his loved ones.
a very noble man. He was a great man that would speak for him. I love you, Uncle Ed, and thank you for everything.
Each guest who comes here at Heritage Park to pay their last respects to former President Ramos has here or her own recollection of his good qualities as a leader, as a friend, and as a human being. The visiting hours will end at 10 p.m. and we are expecting that more government officials, members of the business community, and former members of the Malacanang Press Corps will attend the wake tomorrow. Pia.
Stanley Gahete there reporting. Join me for a CNN Philippines special coverage in the morning of Tuesday, August 9th, for the state funeral for former President Fidel Valdez Ramos. The Health Department steps up vaccination efforts after failing to hit target numbers. Almost 365,000 people were boosted from July 26th to August 2nd, while nearly 2,700 senior citizens were vaccinated. The DOH admits these are not enough to meet the 8.7 million full vaccination target and the 36 million for booster shots. Officials are opening up inoculation sites in more public areas. Among the target recipients are transport drivers and operators, commuters, and mall goers.
At yung ginagawa natin ngayon, ang ating Pinaslakas campaign ay isang pamamaraan para kahit na nakakakita tayo ng pagtaas ng kaso, hindi siya magta-translate into an equal or even higher increase in our admissions. Hindi siya magta-translate sa pagkapuno ng ating mga ospital tulad ng nakita natin ng Delta. Nag-high risk tayo. Hindi lang sa total, pati ICU utilization. So the message is let's do something para hindi tayo umabot doon sa sinasabi nating mga peak ng hindi lang kaso, pero even our admissions and utilization rates. Para safe tayo, sinasabi ng projections, mag-booster tayo.
The DOH cites projections COVID-19 cases could peak by September or October. Lawmakers revives calls to abolish the interagency task force despite rising infections. Senate Minority Leader Coco Pimentel says COVID-19 efforts should be streamlined and leaving the job to the DOH will lead to a quicker and more efficient response. The Senate is implementing stricter health protocols after Senator Alan Peter Cayetano tested positive for COVID-19 Wednesday. Senate Secretary Ray Bantug says beginning Monday, guests will be required to show proof of negative antigen test results taken in the last 24 hours. A list of accredited laboratories will be provided. Pimentel says there is no need to return to hybrid setup. Only visitors with important matters should enter the Senate building. When we come back, how are Southeast Asian nations reacting to tensions as China launches its biggest military drills around Taiwan? And a lawmaker pushing for a measure regulating the use of sidewalks. More after the break.
RPN DXKP Pagadian, ang inyong Radyo Ronda. RPN Radio Philippines Network. Radio Philippines Network. Live to the world, pinaagi sa FB page. Karon, mag-download na. Pinaagi sa Google Play o Apple Store, YouTube o Twitter. Alang sa mas kipakuskan ng mga balita, komentaryo, kasayuran o kalingawan. Ang mas kipakuskan ng inyong Radyo Ronda. Member, kapisanan ng mga broadcaster ng Pilipinas.
Welcome back. Former President Duterte refuses to comment on President Marcos's decision not to rejoin the International Criminal Court. Duterte reiterates he's ready to face charges over his bloody drug war, but only in Philippine courts. He insists the ICC has no jurisdiction on alleged crimes committed while the country was still a member of the tribunal.
I would rather not comment on it, actually. I cannot, I am a civilian. I cannot say anything about it. Tahimik lang muna ako.
Justice Secretary Boying Remulla said there will be no sacred cows in his department's drug war review, even personalities as high as the former chief executive. A bill has been filed at the House of Representatives seeking to penalize the unauthorized use of sidewalks, whether for parking or selling, or using them as bicycle or motorcycle lanes. Lois Calderon gives us details.
Divisoria sidewalks are crowded, both by pedestrians and vendors. We found Aling Nena selling clothes and slippers in one corner. It's not her real name because what she does is illegal. And for the past 3 decades, cops and the MMDA have been chasing her.
Takot at takot kami. Nakiusap po kami na kung pwede po namin makuha yung tinda namin. Ayaw po nila ibigay.
Nakumpiska po yung mga paninday?
Opo, kasi binibigay daw po nila sa bahay ang punan. Utang lang po namin yan sa 5-6.
Divisoria is a public market, but when both buyers and sellers converge on sidewalks, there'll be no more space for those just passing by. That's why lawmaker Ramon Huico Jr. wants all sidewalks cleared of vendors like Aling Nena. House Bill 1252 has a long list of what and who cannot use sidewalks. That includes parking and doing business. The proposed law is more punitive because it penalizes violators a fine of as much as 30,000 pesos or a jail term of 1 year. MMDA's head of Task Force Special Operations Colonel Bong Nebrija says the Huico bill gives the existing land transportation law more teeth.
There's really no penalty. It's confiscation. But what we do sometimes for those repeated offenders, we write them environmental tickets. The consequence might be deterrent for people to use the sidewalks for personal or commercial use.
For sidewalk vendors like Aling Nena, what law enforcers confiscate is equal to her family's lifeline. Her sick child needs an operation.
Kaya yung anak ko po ngayon hindi pa na-ooperahan kasi gawa po na wala pong tinda.
It's a cat and mouse chase each day.
Personally, I do not want to haggle with them taking their goods. The capital that they use in selling these goods are coming from loan sharks. The 5-6, the microfinancing on the streets, or what we call the 5-6, right? And if you will take that, they will just borrow again. Ang batas walang puso, ang enforcers ng MMDA meron.
Huico's bill makes pedestrians the #1 priority. But people like Aling Nena who live in fear each day also seek to live with dignity. Lois Calderon, CNN Philippines.
The Education Department directs local governments to remove quarantine facilities that were set up in public schools during the pandemic. That says more than 15 million public school students are expected to return to classrooms by November. The opening of the new school year begins in 2.5 weeks.
Especially here in Metro Manila, marami yatang nagamit na quarantine facilities. There's a school in Quezon City na nakausap na rin natin, and they are already pulling out this week yung mga isolation tents na nandun pa rin. We are coordinating with the LGUs, specifically the barangays. Kung meron pa silang mga places like basketball courts, rooms that they are not using, we are also looking at tapping into the private sector kung meron po silang maibibigay na mga rooms para sa ating learners.
The DepEd is working on setting up temporary learning spaces or tents for schools damaged by the magnitude 7 earthquake that hit Abra last week. Latest data shows over 600 classrooms were totally damaged, while over 1,000 were partially damaged. The estimated cost for reconstruction is around 2.1 billion pesos. The mayor of Panglao Town in Bohol province gets the side of the vendor behind the allegedly overpriced food on Virgin Island. A viral post shows 13 tourists were charged more than 26,000 pesos for a seafood meal, but Mayor Boy Arcay says the vendor told him the meal was good for 20 people, including their boatmen.
Ang sabi ng nagbibinta, malayo rin daw ng kinukumprahan nila yung paninda kasi kuminsan doon sila namimili about 120 kilometers from Panglao. Mahal rin gasolina. Parang nalungkot rin yung may-ari ng tindahan kasi sabi niya, bakit pinipicturean nila na tapos na, mga buto-buto na nang naiwan?
The island is temporarily closed to food vendors while tourism activities are limited to sightseeing as authorities probe the controversy. The local government of Panglao is now considering putting up a street food or night market as an alternative area of business for displaced vendors. Global headlines now. China fires multiple missiles in its biggest military drills over Taiwan following the visit of United States House Speaker Nancy Pelosi Wednesday. Beijing has strongly opposed the trip where the top U.S. official pledged support to the self-ruled island. Leaders from Southeast Asian nations call for restraint to prevent a possible armed conflict. Tristan Nodalo is still in China with the latest.
China's People's Liberation Army kicks off its military exercises in key strategic areas around Taiwan in response to the visit of U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi on Tuesday. The drills are taking place in the northern, eastern, and southern portions of Taiwan, which could block sea and air spaces. Pelosi's visit was strongly condemned by Beijing with a commitment to respond militarily and economically.
玩火者绝对没有好下场，犯我中华者必将受到惩处。
World leaders are calling for maximum restraint as tensions over Taiwan build up. Foreign ministers from the ASEAN region also expressed concern over the situation in Taiwan Strait, a potential flashpoint that could lead to an actual armed confrontation. The regional bloc also called on parties to refrain from provocative actions and uphold the so-called One China policy. The United Nations also reiterates their position on the decades-long principle that there is only one Chinese government.
We abide by General Assembly resolutions, by the One China policy, and that is the orientation that we have in everything we do.
As tensions heat up, the Philippines is closely monitoring developments in Taiwan, highlighting the need for contingency plans.
While we don't have the intention of engaging in a war with any country, okay, we might be caught in crossfires with warring countries, ano? And what we need to prepare for is not a capability to fight a war, but what we need to prepare for immediately and urgently is the capability to respond to any foreseeable contingencies.
The Manila Economic Cultural Office in Taiwan says contingency and evacuation plans are in place for thousands of overseas Filipino workers in the island. Reporting from Guangzhou, China, Tristan Udalo, CNN Philippines.
The Philippines joining calls for restraint, saying diplomacy and dialogue should prevail. Up next on Newsnight, global producer Warner Brothers teases a sequel to the hit movie Joker. And Maroon 5 is returning to Manila. Find out how and where to buy tickets. Stay tuned to CNN Philippines.
RPN DXKP Pagadian. Ang inyong Radyo Ronda RPN. RPN Radio Philippines Network. Radio Philippines Network. Live to the world. Pinaagi sa FB page. Karon, mag-download na. Pinaagi sa Google Play o Apple Store, YouTube o Twitter. Alang sa mas kipakuskan ng mga balita, komentaryo, kasayuran o kalingawan. Ang mas kipakuskan ng inyong Radyo Ronda.
Member, kapisanan ng mga broadcaster ng Pilipinas.
This is Newsnight on CNN Philippines. New IBO World Flyweight Champion Dave Apolinario paid a courtesy call on President Marcos yesterday in Malacanang. The Pinoy boxer gave Mr. Marcos an autographed pair of boxing gloves, while the chief executive congratulated the undefeated Apolinario, who now has 17 wins to his name. The Doberman knocked out three-division former world champ Gideon Buthelezi in South Africa over the weekend. Making a buzz online, some Warner Brothers films streaming only on HBO Max were suddenly removed from the platform. Among the 6 titles now gone are sci-fi romance Moonshot, starring Cole Sprouse, and The Witches, featuring Anne Hathaway. Netizens speculating it's part of the company's efforts to cut $3 billion in expenses after a costly merger deal with streaming platform Discovery. This also coincides with Warner Brothers' decision not to release its star-studded Batgirl movie featuring Leslie Grace and Michael Keaton. Warner Brothers says the move reflects its strategic shift for the DC Universe and HBO Max. The directors say they're saddened and shocked by the news. They add the movie was far from finished, but they hope that one day fans will get to see the final cut. The film was already in post-production and was set to arrive on HBO Max this year. The platform is not yet available here in the Philippines. But as one DC hero says goodbye, one villain will be saying hello soon. CNN's David Daniel has that and a newly dropped romantic comedy on tonight's Hollywood Minute.
Joker fans have plenty of time to build up anticipation for the sequel. Joker Folie à Deux is set to arrive in theaters October 4th, 2024, 5 years to the day after the original film's release. 2019's Joker made more than $1 billion worldwide, the highest-grossing R-rated movie of all time.
I just started a new job. It's totally consuming my life. I have no time for anything else, and I'm okay with that.
And I just took a break from my job, and I have all the time in the world, and I am totally okay with that.
See? We're doomed.
After an awful first date, Asha and Ravi pretend to be dating to get their parents off their backs and to survive wedding season. The rom-com contrasts traditional arranged relationships and modern online dating.
It is just so similar.
And that's actually better, I think, in a sense. That's my opinion. Just because at least there's like some reference point.
There's some reference points. I don't want to call anything better or worse, but there are options. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like,
that's true.
Who knows? You might just bump into the love.
Have you been on any
of
of the dating apps?
I've been on the dating apps. They suck.
Wedding season is now streaming on Netflix. In Hollywood, I'm David Daniel.
Maroon 5 fans, here's your wake-up call to grab tickets for the band's concert here at home. The fan club pre-sale for Maroon 5 World Tour in Manila kicked off today. The Live Nation pre-sale is set tomorrow. General sale begins Saturday. The band performs at the Mall of Asia Arena in Pasay City on December 8th. K-pop meets K-drama with Sandara Park and Squid Game star Jong Ho-yeon taking pictures together in Seoul, South Korea. The former 21 member responded to a netizen who pointed out that Ho-yeon is a blackjack or a fan of the girl group. Apparently, Ho-yeon said she liked 21 and even sang lyrics of their hit Fire for Sandara. And that is it for now. Join me again on news.ph at 7 p.m. I'm Pio Ontiveros for Newsnight, where we go above and beyond the headlines.
This program
West Point graduate, Korean War veteran, Philippine Constabulary officer, and then its chief in the years before EDSA 1986. His defection and decision to hold up in Camp Aguinaldo with then Defense Minister Juan Ponce Enrile and the Ram Boys sealed the fate of former President Ferdinand Edralin Marcos. Cory Aquino chose him to be her AFP Chief of Staff, then Defense Secretary, and later presidential candidate. Breaking ranks with the political party LDP after losing to House Speaker Monching Mitra in a convention, Ramos formed Lakas, which was his vehicle to run in 1992. His campaign slogan, a clever take on his name and his date with history, EDSA 92, won that election with just 23% of the vote. But the master tactician, he and House Speaker Joe De Venecia cobbled together a rainbow coalition. As president, he led over a period of economic achievements toward so-called tiger economy status, credited with dismantling monopolies, cheering the country towards Philippines 2000, legislating protection for migrant workers, bringing a measure of peace to Mindanao. Diligent and disciplined, his trademark rolled-up sleeves were not unusual, insisted on CSW, complete staff work, not your regular politician, but mastered the art of war and diplomacy. When he stepped down from office, he did so with grace and dignity, turning over the presidency to the man who handily beat his own choice for president. Everyone knew his trademark thumbs-up sign and his trademark Kaya Natin To rallying cry and his trademark sense of humor. He was Steady Eddie, the man who kept democracy alive and intact through every coup Cory Aquino faced down. He was Tabaco, the man who chomped on his cigar like there was no tomorrow. He was FVR, PC Chief, Armed Forces Chief of Staff, Defense Secretary, Commander-in-Chief, husband to Ming, father to 5 daughters, and a grandfather. Soldier, freedom fighter, leader, visionary, patriot, a man of our times, a man for the ages. Good evening, I'm Pia Ontiveros. Welcome to a special presentation of Politics as Usual. Tonight we remember former President Fidel V. Ramos, many of us called FVR. Joining me as our first guest is his former Interior Secretary, Rafi Alunan. Secretary Rafi, thank you very much for joining us also via Zoom. Even before, sir, you were DILG Secretary, you were with the Tourism Department noong panahon ni Cory Aquino. And I remember you in the December 1989 coup negotiating with rebel soldiers, the Ram Boys who had holed up in a hotel in Makati. But let's talk about those years with the Cory government. You met and worked with FVR at that time, who was first AFP Chief and then Defense Secretary. What was that like, sir?
Well, first of all, thank you, Pia, for having me. And very happy to say a few things about my experience with FVR. Yes, you're correct. We served together in the cabinet of President Cory Aquino. I entered as an undersecretary and later on became his peer in the cabinet as Secretary of Tourism. We worked together on many occasions. Foremost in my mind were the disaster relief operations that we conducted together after the Baguio earthquake, Pinatubo. And we also worked together in preserving Camp John Hay. He provided strategic support by giving me General Gaudencio Tobias, who was his boss in PhilCAG, and General Demi Camp, who provided a battalion of Air Force security personnel to help me preserve Camp John Hay the way we received it from the Americans who left abruptly after the and of course, when we discussed the bases with the United States, the first person I went to was Secretary Ramos to ask whether I could take on that job, because I said I will not take it on unless I have the full support of the Armed Forces of the Philippines, because there's no sense in holding the flag up high without the AFP backing me up. And to a man, Secretary Ramos, General De Villa, General Biason, General Apatia, and the rest of the High Command said, this is our moment, stand your ground, work for the national interest, we'll back you up.
Secretary Rafi, you campaigned for FVR in 1992 when he ran for president. Why did you want him to be president?
Why did he want to be president?
Why did you want him to be president?
Why did I want him to be president? Yeah. Okay, well, that's a very good question. I wanted him to be president because I was already impressed with him even before he worked for President Cory Aquino while he was still in the administration of President Marcos, because he represented the good side of the armed forces. He symbolized reform. He symbolized professionalism. And I already saw in him a leader that we could count on or rely upon when the time came. And that time eventually came in February 1986. And during the time that he served as Secretary of National Defense under President Cory, he defended the seat of democracy and the centers of power, centers of gravity in Metro Manila, to prevent authoritarian forces from regaining power. He impressed me already in February 1986 as one of those who was instrumental in restoring freedom and democracy, which we needed so badly to push the country. And he believed in that. But he was put to the test during the time of President Cory, where he had to quell about maybe 7 coup attempts. Two of them were the most, shall we say,
the most violent.
Hurtful.
August 1987, December 1989.
Yes, but it was most hurtful to the economy, to the point where by 1989 we were back again as Asia's sick man. Our economy plunged in 1989 in the same manner as it had plunged in 1983 when Ninoy Aquino was assassinated.
Secretary Rafi.
When it was time for the choosing as to who would represent, who would succeed President Cory, I pushed for President Ramos because he was a non-traditional politician, and he symbolized everything that was needed by the country to move it forward.
My last question for you, Secretary Rafi. I wanted you to tell us behind-the-scenes stories, little vignettes of FVR as president, but we don't have the whole night, but I'm sure there are so many stories. But if there is just one that you can tell us, one story, one little vignette about him that will make us remember him.
Oh, wow. You're asking for the impossible because I have so many.
I know.
Yeah. Well, one thing I will always remember him for, he empowered us. He was a very good leader and manager. He forged a good team and really lived up to his mantra of unity, solidarity, and teamwork. We were ordinary people working in the cabinet. We were no superstars at all. But he had a good eye for people who could work together. And that we did. We worked and we were able to deliver under his leadership. So I'll never his code of good governance and good citizenship, which fell under 9 words, PI. I'll never forget these 9 words because I've instilled it. I've internalized it. Unity, solidarity, teamwork, caring, sharing, daring, and reform, perform, transform. And if we were to follow all those 9 words every day in our lives, we would be able to transform ourselves into better Filipinos for a better Philippines. That's the legacy he left behind. That's the one I'll remember the most.
Thank you so much for those stories about former President Ramos and for those 9 words, for reminding us about those 9 words. Very glad, sir, that you can join us. Former DILG Secretary Rafi Alunan. Salamat po, sir. The Armed Forces also paying tribute to its former Commander-in-Chief with traditional full military honors and services. We'll talk about that with Navy Captain Leo Dimoc. He's joining us live via Zoom. Captain, or the equivalent rank, Colonel, Navy Captain Leo Dimoc, thank you so much for being with us. Let's begin with this. As a former Commander-in-Chief, he's entitled to all these military honors and services. Tell us first, very briefly, about what happened on day 1. Day 1, of course, is the day after he died. And there are certain processes, certain procedures, things that happen in all military camps. Go ahead, Captain Dimoc.
Thank you, Ms. Tika. During the first day after the announcement of the notice of death of the former President Fidel V. Ramos, we formed there was a military formation in all of the military installations and camps, and reading of the notice of death of the former President was then rendered by the commanders of those military installations. But before that, during the same day, there was a firing of guns that started at 5 o'clock in the morning. It is made possible by the firing of 8 successive gunfires by our artillery pieces. And then immediately at 6 o'clock in the morning of the same day, there was a single fire also from our artillery pieces successively after 30 minutes. And then it goes until 5 o'clock in the afternoon during our retreat, wherein another 8 salvos of the artillery pieces fire were rendered again.
At may
that was the first day.
At may ibig sabihin ng 8 guns, right, Leo?
Yes, Ms. Pia, that signifies the 8 provinces, symbolizes the 8 provinces that first fought against Spain during the Philippine Revolution. It's the same symbolism as what is depicted in the rays of the sun in our Philippine flag.
And of course, as a former president, commander-in-chief, a former general, what we saw in FVR's wake are vigil guards, for example, the flag beside the urn. Captain Leo Dimoc of J3 of the Armed Forces, which is in charge of these military honors and services, will be explaining all that and more after this very quick break. Be right back. Welcome back. This is Politics as Usual special presentation as we look back on the life and legacy of the late former President Fidel V. Ramos. Still with me is Navy Captain Leo Dimoc of the AFP's J3, which is in charge of all military honors and services for former Commander-in-Chief. Leo, kanina binanggit ko na, no, yung vigil guards, for example, what we see in the wake. Very quickly, can you explain all that to us?
Yes, Ms. Pia. During the death of our former President Fidel Ramos, we are actually mandated to provide a vigil watch to the former president. This is composed of one vigil officer and 4 vigil guards. On top of that, we are providing an officer in attendance that is closely coordinating with the family. And this will be done during the wake until his interment.
Okay, let's talk about that, the interment, the day of the burial. Tell us what we're going to see, and let's go through the rundown. We have a funeral procession from Heritage Park where FVR's remains are being waked. And we will have what you call graveside honors. Sige Leo, ikwento mo sa amin. Of course, this is good that we're talking to you because you were in charge also of the funeral honors for former President Noy Aquino last June. So, kumbaga, uulitin nyo lang yan lahat. So, ikwento mo lang sa amin what is going to happen every step of the way.
Yes, ma'am. As what we previously did during the death of the former president, also President Benigno Aquino last year, on the day of burial, that will be on 9 August in the morning, prior to his transfer of his remains to the libingan ng mga bayani, there will be a military departure honors. It will be provided for by a battalion of honor guards from the Armed Forces of the Philippines, of course coming from the different branches of service, the Army, the Navy, and the Air Force. And then after the departure honors, there will be a procession going to the libingan ng mga bayani. Upon arrival at the libingan ng mga bayani, there will be an arrival honors that will be rendered to the former president. Of course, this will be again with the inclusion of the traditional 21 gun salute. After the arrival honors at the libingan ng mga bayani, point of arrival, there will be a funeral march then that will proceed from the arrival honor area to the interment area, which is at the presidential section of the libingan ng mga bayani. And that will be done by a funeral march that will be rendered from the point of arrival, wherein the arrival honors were rendered, until the interment area or the presidential section at that site where he will be interred. And during the funeral march, there will be flower drops that will be performed by our
Air Force
from the Air
choppers.
Force.
Okay.
Yes, and upon arrival at the graveside ceremonies and honors will be performed with him. In the graveside honors, the following will be performed. First, there will be, as soon as everyone is settled there will be a final benediction by the chaplain in charge. Again, there will be a 21 gun salute that will be rendered to the former president in honor of the former president. And then after that will be the 3 volleys over the grave. This is actually a rifle fire from a section of the firing party composed of non-commissioned officers firing 3 volleys. At the last volley, that's the time where the taps will be sounded. And this taps will be the last bugle call for the former president. After which, then the flag will be folded and then presented to the next of kin. It's in honor of the as a symbol of his service to our country.
What are the words that are said to that next of kin? And in this case, it will be former First Lady Ming Ramos who will receive the flag.
Yes, Mr. Yaya, on behalf of the grateful nation, that's where the narrative is.
And Leo, kanina you said no, there will be a funeral procession, may honor guard no, that will move from Heritage to, within Libingan. Brigade size ito, correct?
It is the arrival honors is a battalion size full military honors, and then the procession will be a brigade size, which will be also included to be participated by the battalion size arrival honors.
When you say, all right, when you say battalion and brigade, how many? Go ahead.
There is an order actually. First, it will be the escort or the commander with the staff, and then the colors followed by the band that played the music, and then the funeral escorts, and followed by the chaplain service or the clergy, and then the hearse with the honorary pallbearers on the sides, and then the active pallbearers composed of the non-commissioned officers, and then the family and relatives together with the military host, which is the chief of staff, and the co-host that should be the heads of the Philippine Air Force, the commanding general of the Philippine Army, and the flag officer in command, which are co-hosts of this activity. And then followed by the friends and other patriotic and fraternal organizations.
Do we know already who the honorary pallbearers are?
It will be designated by the personnel division of the armed forces.
All right. And you said as military host, it is the Chief of Staff, the Armed Forces. This is an honor to a former president because the Chief of Staff is not military host to other burials, correct?
Yes, there is only one military host to presidents and former presidents, and it is only the Chief of Staff of the Armed Forces of the Philippines.
Together with the major services commanders. Is there anything else, Captain Leo, that we need to know that we're going to see on August 9th?
That is exactly what will happen during the inurnment day. And as soon as the flag is presented to the next of kin, and that will be the end of the ceremonies for that particular day. However, the mourning will still continue until on that day also, wherein that was the day wherein all the flags will be flown half staff, half mast. But for the military, the morning band, what I'm wearing right now, will be continued and it will end on 29 August, 30 days after the death of the president.
For 1 month. Leo, itong dinescribe nyo, no, this will all go by clockwork. This is tradition. You are not going to deviate from tradition. This is what we've seen before. We will see again on August 9th, right?
Yes, Ms. Pia, that is the military traditions and the military honors that is presented. That's the highest respects that being presented by the EAP to our fallen Commander-in-Chief and former President.
And your snappiest salute for him, of course. Captain Leo Dimok of the Navy and of the J3 Armed Forces of the Philippines. Maraming salamat. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. You're still watching a special presentation of Politics as Usual as we pay tribute to the legacy of FDR. My next guest is a veteran journalist, Pulitzer Prize winner, and a former member of Malacanang and the Defense Press Corps. Speaking to us via Zoom is Manny Mogato. Manny Mogs, hi, thank you so much for being here. Manny, good evening. Kailan mo nakilala si FDR? And what was that first meeting like?
I started covering FBR in January 1987. I was a police reporter for the Manila Chronicle when it resumed publication in June 1986. After 6 months, because there was so many coup attempts against Cory Aquino, my editors moved me to military and defense coverage. So my baptismal part started in January 1987 when Colonel Oscar Canlas stormed GMA 7 and occupied it for 3 days. And so that was a time I saw former President and former Armed Forces Chief Fidel V. Ramos. I found him very strict, no? Suplado si FBR, no? Kasi I remember during press conference when hindi gusto yung mga tanong, tatayo na lang sa bigla, iiwan kami. So kami nakatawa nga. Bakit ba siya nagalit sa atin? No?
Baka kasi hindi maganda yung tanong nyo, baka hindi maayos ang tanong nyo. Kaya tumayo.
Kasi minsan masyadong maangas yung mga reporter eh. So anyway, ang problema naman namin kay FBR when answering during press conferences, isang tanong mo lang, ang haba niyang sumagot. Paikot-ikot, no? Paikot-ikot. Now, balikan mo, tignan mo yung tape recorder mo, i-transcribe mo, wala pala sinabi.
Nambola pala.
Nambola lang. Medyo naaliw-aliw kami kay FBR kasi nga siya eh. Para biro, yung nga lang, yung mga jokes na corny. No? Parang pinitik. Kaya siyempre, tatalo ka rin, no?
Siyempre.
Pero there was a big transformation when he became president in 1992. Kasi siya, charming na. I think he became a politician, so that's why masyado rin siyang mabait sa press. Hindi na siya pikon.
Okay.
At he's very accessible, no? Every week, every Wednesday, meron siyang press conference sa Malacanang o kung saan man siya nandoon, no? At the same time, he also gave a lot of exclusive interviews sa mga publication na nag-request. I left Malacanang.
Manny, sandali teka, bago mo ituloy yan, mag-OT na tayo. Pero we need to take one short quick break. We'll come back to you, Manny, dahil meron pa rin tayong isa pang guest, yung dati niyang aide-de-camp, si retired Colonel Dencio Acop. Manny, sandali lang When we come back, Politics as usual. We'll be right back. This is a Politics as Usual special presentation remembering FVR, a man of our time. Still with me, veteran journalist Manny Mogato, and joining us too is former President Ramos's former aide-de-camp, retired Colonel Dencio Acop, who's joining us via Zoom from Perth, Australia. But first, let's go back to Manny. Manny, I wish we had more time, lalo na sasabihin ko sana tayong mga veteranong journalist, pero mas veterano ka pa sa akin dahil mas nauna ka pa talaga sa akin. Pero Manny, I'm sure ang daming kwento. No? Ikwento mo na lang, isang kwento lang ng isang behind-the-scenes story na hindi alam ng mga viewers natin, ng mga readers ninyo, ng mga ordinary citizens. You know, something that you were privileged to see na nakita mo kay FVR.
Si FBR may grace under pressure, no? Kasi marami na akong near-death incidents, no? Joining FBR sa mga kanyang command visits, no? In one of these incidents, yung aming poker plane nag-overshoot sa runway sa may Northern Samar, sa Tarman. And si FBR is very cool. Sabi ko, labas muna kayo. He was the last man to emerge from a burning plane. At pagbabayan sa aeroplano, sabi niya, okay, let's get back to work. Ganon si FBR, no? Hindi lang sa aeroplano, helicopter, marami na kaming pinagdaanan na medyo delikado yung buhay namin. Pero may isa pa akong isang incident na pinasakay ako sa B-150 ni President Ramos when he visited Borongan, Samar. Yung helicopter namin naglanding sa infested barangay ng MPA kasi umulan, hindi makalipad. So it was a 12-hour trip from Borongan to Tacloban. Nasa loob ako ng B-150 with FBR, and all the time he was reading and writing marginal notes, yung kanyang famous red pen.
Right. Famous marginal notes. Everybody knows that. Okay.
Yes. So, at multitasker si FBR. Doon sa Bacolod, may town hall meeting, maingay. Si FBR nagbabasa at nagsusulat. And suddenly, yung isang speaker, ininterrupt niya, kinurek niya. Sabi ko, nakikinig pala siya. Akala ko nagsusulat at nagbabasa. Pero observe pala na yung sinasabi. So, I think, hindi lang sa multitasker, workaholic pa, dahil madaling araw gising na para magbasa ng news clippings na pinapadala ni Lulu Ilustre at naglalagay siya ng marginal notes doon sa, mga clippings. So, yun.
Yeah. This must have been challenging for you, Manny, di ba? Kasi as journalists, we do our best to keep a safe distance from those we cover, no? But apparently, you did get very up close and personal with him. But I'm gonna go first kasi nakuubos yung oras natin. Sorry po talaga. Colonel Dencio Acop, na former aide-de-camp. Sir Dencio, tell us just kahit one... andyan ba si Colonel? Sir Dencio, oo. Tell us, sir, one of the best behind-the-scenes stories of FVR that you as aide-de-camp was privileged to have witnessed and had been a part of, sir.
Hi, good evening again, Pia, and thank you for inviting me. Medyo mahirap sagutin. Many things to say about the great man. I feel honored to have even been associated with him in some way. Marami, Pia. I remember one time during the December 89 coup. Are you hearing me?
Yes, we can hear you, sir.
Yeah.
All right, I think we have a little bit of a... All right, medyo bumagsak ang signal. But we're gonna try one last time to get back to... Yes, Sir Dencio, sige po. siguro we have about a minute, but before you go on, sir, I just wanted to tell the viewers that that's true. There's so much to say about this great man, but you are joining us for the coverage of his burial on Tuesday. So doon nyo po talaga makikwento lahat. But for tonight, just one story, sir.
All right. Yeah, I remember one time during the December 89 coup, he was the Secretary of Defense. I was his Deputy Chief of Security. And binobomba yung Camp Aguinaldo, yung Department of Defense. And then bigla na lang sinabi ni FBR na, halika kayo, nung huminto na yung pagbobomba ng mga tora-tora, sabi niya, let's go out of the building and check the damage. So nagulat kaming lahat kasi siyempre, alam mo naman, delikado yun, di ba? Baka bumalik and all that. So, we accompanied him outside. Naglakad-lakad kami sa parade field ng Cabaginaldo, and then luckily, the rebel planes never came back to hit us again. Pero tapos on the way back, sabi niya sa akin, saan tayo pwedeng pumunta? Sabi ko, what do you mean, sir, na saan tayo pwedeng pumunta? Kasi it's so unexpected. We didn't really have a contingency plan for that kind of, at that time. So, binulong ko si FBR. Sabi ko sa kanya, sir, siguro maganda, wag tayong pumunta dun sa alam ng kalaban na lagi ninyong pinupuntahan. So, let's find a place na unexpected, maybe just like a safe house, sabi niya. Sabi ko sa kanya, sabi niya sa akin, may alam ka ba? Sabi ko, yes sir, meron, sa Quezon City. But expectedly sabi niya, no, I think we need to be visible to the people, sabi niya. Kahit anong gawin natin, we have to be seen, not running away from the rebels, but fighting them head on, sabi niya. We are the government, we are not running away, sabi niya. And he was right.
Well, Sir Dencio, like I said, you will be joining us for CNN Philippines special coverage of the burial of former President Fidel Valdez Ramos, and we're going to hear all your stories about him, and we look forward to that. But for now, I need to say thank you so much to you, Sir Dencio Acop, joining us from Australia, and Manny Mogato joining us also via Zoom. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. Fidel Valdez Ramos, 12th President, a man of our times, a man for the ages. Rest well, Mr. President. Thank you for your service. Our snappiest salute.
Thank you.